Everybody? I hope you're doing great. I have a really great email I'm going to go over for you. And the gist of what I'm going to get to on this email is that a mom is asking, how do I help my child get to the next step? The child sort of has a decent foundation in what he's supposed to do. How do we get him to do it? So here's how the email goes. And what I'm going to do, by the way, is I'm going to give you 5 ways to help in a situation like this. So here's how it goes. Hey Seth, I've been thinking about next semester, which happens to be the upcoming spring semester. My child did okay, meaning that there are no D's or F's, but there were several classes that he should have done had better grades in. Actually, most of them, exclamation point. These are classes where he started off strong. His MO typically, as you describe, is as you describe, although he seems to be able to Hail Mary it at the end, which is stressful for both of us. So a lot of times this child goes through the dip, their grades fall apart, and then they're swimming upstream for the rest of the semester. And in this case, he Hail Marys it, meaning the last month of school, there's a ton of stress, and he's trying to do all his projects and papers and everything, and he's able to pull it off okay. Meanwhile, as you get further in school, into high school and such, it gets harder and harder to successfully Hail Mary it. Anyhow, our tutor does a great job of working with our child. The problem, though, is the follow through, finishing, remembering to finish, handing in everything. Of course, he rejects the planner and so often forgets key elements of assignments. He usually volunteers what he needs to do and then doesn't do it. And he's already fluent in your systems and he has rejected some, which I'm totally okay with. It says he's made some of his own, which is really good. He doesn't have to do everything the way I teach, but getting the some system in place is key, and then refining it for that person. That's called Frankenstudy, by the way, if you haven't been following me for a while. He's sort of in need of a next step, i.e., using the tools you've provided to make himself more responsible as well as being accountable to someone he trusts, like you. I was wondering if you had thoughts on offering something for kids like this who are beyond the basics but still need a push to change their mindset, which is a term loathed by my child, by the way. So, mindset. Mindset's a huge part of this. And what I'm going to talk to you about right now, in terms of how to help with this, has a lot to do with mindset. So, first of all, I want you to understand, parents, that if your child is in this type of a situation, you need them to get to the next level. They have the foundation, they're just not doing it enough to get the results that they need, then it's not one thing. There is no one answer. What you have to do, parents, is you have to, and the child has to do several small things to make a change, okay? It's kind of like working out. Like if you want to get healthy and you start going to the gym and all you do is bicep curls and you don't do any aerobic activity, you don't work out your legs, you don't work out your back, all you do is bicep curls. That is not going to achieve your goals, okay? So when you're working with kids like this, you have to take many different approaches and apply lots of little things that are going to make the change. So what I want to talk about in terms of mindset, and then I'm going to tell you ways to apply this mindset, is what I call the 5% rule. I also talk a lot about micro successes. Basically, the 5% rule is this. I tell students all the time that the reality is that in order for them to do significantly better, it often only takes a little bit more effort than they're already putting in. If they can just put in 5% more effort, they often will get way better results. So let's say your child is getting a bunch of D's and they put in 5% more effort. Chances are they can bring themselves up to B's relatively easily. Now, just because they're not actually doing 5%, it's more a mindset. And that mindset is to say, hey, I can do 5% more. I can do one more homework problem when I hit a wall. I can write one more sentence when I know I'm the type of writer who my teacher always says there's not enough detail. I can do one more sentence. I can do one more word. I can spend 5 more minutes on studying. I can study one more day this week on this test. So it's how do we get it's really a mindset, because it's how do we get the student to take more action? And the reason they don't is because it's overwhelming. The reason it's overwhelming is because it's abstract and they think it's this big. And if we can make them feel like it's this big, like it's manageable, then they'll do more than 5%. But if we can just make it feel like 5%, that and have that kind of mindset, then I'm not trying to motivate them. I'm trying to get them to do what they don't want to do. And I'm trying to say, look, can you just do one more problem? Can you just do this for 5 more minutes? Can you do it for 1 more minute? Can you write one more sentence on this paragraph? Can you do just that much more? And when that overwhelm is not there, that helps a lot. Now I'm going to give you 5 things that are going to help sort of with implementing this 5% philosophy. One way to get 5% more, to get a little bit more, is accountability, meaning having your child implement systems that are going to help them be more accountable. So, for example, I will often now as a coach, you may or may not work as a parent because kids are not as receptive, but as a coach, I will often email or text or call my students and say, hey, did you do this? Did you do that? And just, or I'll say, what reminders do you want from me this week? And I'll text you that reminder. So that little bit of accountability can go a long way. If it helps them get one more thing in that they get credit on, that can be a difference between a C and a B, for example, etc. Another thing that has to do with the 5% rule is office hours or going to see their teacher. I really push my students to advocate for themselves and see their teachers. If they go into office hours and see their teacher at the beginning of a semester or a couple times during the semester and say, hey, what's up? Just wanted to check in with you. How are you doing? Hey, do you have any success tips for me? So I will often recommend that a student go in to see their teacher and ask for a success tip. What can I do to be more successful in your class? That shows interest in the class. Often the teacher will give them a great tip, and the teacher knows that they're interested, and the teacher will naturally help encourage them throughout the rest of the semester. Hey, thanks for coming in. Hey, don't forget to do this. Don't forget to do that. So that goes a long way, and it's a tiny little 5% thing that goes a long way. Next thing is study groups, and middle schoolers don't often do this, but it's great to get them started in middle school. But high schoolers and especially college students, starting study groups where you have 1 or 2 or 3 friends and you meet on certain days, or for certain projects or certain tests or whatever, and they all study together. It's fun, it's more interesting, it makes studying more exciting, and you learn so much that way by studying with other people, and it builds in more accountability because they have to be there if they started the study group. And that definitely gives them that 5% more studying than they would have otherwise done. Another one is advocacy emails, which is similar to office hours, but which is having my students say, hey, what's up? I want to do great in your class this semester. What ideas do you have for me? Can you give me some feedback on what I could do differently or something like that? So that's a very easy thing, a short little email to teachers to say, hey, I'm interested in doing well. What do you got for me? And then the last thing is routine. So the more routine, because a lot of times these kids are not very routine kids. So having them, let's say that their study time now is from 7 to 8:30 or something. It doesn't really matter what it is, but putting in place study routine so that there's no ambiguity around it. No saying, oh, I'll study when I feel like it tonight. Taking that choice away. Now, they don't have to study at exactly the same time every night, but having a printed, posted routine that takes the thinking out of it so that they know this is my study time makes it a lot easier than having to decide, oh, when do I feel like it? Because they're often not going to feel like it until there's a lot of pressure or arguments or what have you. So, I want to make really clear that this is not about motivation. I'm not trying to motivate students, okay? I'm trying to make them feel emotionally safe enough to take one next micro step, that 5%, that 1% rule, whatever you want to call it. I'm trying to make them emotionally feel safe. I want to get that real clear. I want them to emotionally feel not overwhelmed and safe to take a small micro action that is going to move them forward. And oftentimes, once they do get started, they'll get a little bit of momentum and they'll do way more than they did before. It may not be perfect, it may not be complete, it may not be the highest quality, but it's growth. And that is what is going to get your child to change, is growth, 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 growth. Not perfection, but how do we get them to take a little more action all the time? And that's what works. Anyhow, I hope this helps you, and I hope you have a fantastic new year. Take care.